Tech Officer Vrintal jumped from his sleep pod, his blue skin turning pale. In 300 years of service, he had never heard that particular sound. It meant only one thing. Someone was talking back. The Galactic Council's Deep Space Monitoring Station floated in the empty void between star systems. Its job was simple. Listen, record, report. For thousands of years, it had caught signals from across the galaxy. Most were natural sounds from dying stars or black holes. Some came from new species taking their first steps into space. But this signal was different. This signal was answering. Vrintal rushed to the main console. His forearms moved quickly across the controls. The other officers gathered around him. Commander Zethka pushed through the crowd. Her tall, thin frame towered over the others. Her species, the Altarians, were known for staying calm in crisis, but even she looked worried. "Show me," she said. Vrintal's hands shook as he played the recording. The signal was strong, too strong for such a distant system. It came from Sol, a small yellow star in the outer rim. According to their records, Sol 3 had primitive life. No space travel, no advanced technology. Nothing that could send signals across the galaxy, but someone was definitely sending signals. The transmission was rough and crude. It used basic mathematical principles to create a translation matrix. Whoever sent it understood that other species might not speak their language. They had tried to make it simple to understand. Commander Zethka listened to the decoded message 3 times. Each time, her face grew more serious. The words were simple, but their meaning was terrifying. Message received. Survivors located. Retaliation inbound. The room fell silent. Every officer knew what this meant. Someone on Sol 3 had found the distress beacon, the beacon from the Harmony's light. 347 years ago, the exploration ship Harmony's light had been running for its life. Behind it came the Devourers, the most feared force in the galaxy. The Devourers were not just conquerors, they were destroyers. They did not take prisoners. They did not make deals. They consumed everything in their path. Captain Melsar of the Harmony's Light had made a desperate choice. Instead of leading the Devourers to populated worlds, she had fled to the outer rim, to empty space, to systems with no advanced life. Her ship had been badly damaged. When it finally died, it crashed on the 3rd planet of the Sol system. Before the crash, Captain Melsar had sent out a distress beacon. The message was simple. Ship down, crew alive, Devourers in pursuit. Warn the galaxy. The Council had received that beacon. They had also decided to ignore it. Sol was too far away, too remote, too primitive. Sending a rescue mission would take decades. By then, any survivors would be dead. The Council had more important things to worry about. They had been wrong. Commander Zethka stared at the signal analysis. The humans had not just found the beacon, they had decoded it completely. They knew about the Devourers. They knew about the galactic threat. Somehow, in just over 3 centuries, they had gone from primitive hunters to spacefaring warriors. But that was not the most frightening part. Tech Officer Vrintal highlighted a section of the transmission. "Commander, look at this." Attached to the human message were star charts, detailed maps showing Devourer fleet positions across 3 sectors of space. The charts were precise. They showed patrol routes, supply lines, and command structures. Information that the Council's best intelligence networks had failed to gather in centuries of trying. How do they know this? Whispered Communications Officer Thisra. Commander Zethka studied the charts more carefully. The data was recent. Some of the fleet positions were only weeks old. The humans had been watching, learning, preparing. Bring up the Sol System files, she ordered. The main screen filled with basic information about the human homeworld. Sol 3, also called Earth by its inhabitants. Gravity 1.2 times galactic standard. Atmosphere mixture that would kill most species. Temperature ranges that swung from freezing to burning. Weather patterns that included violent storms and natural disasters. A death world. The humans had evolved on a planet that tried to kill them every day. They had survived ice ages, volcanic eruptions, meteor impacts, and countless other disasters. They had fought each other in wars that spanned continents. They had built weapons that could destroy their entire world. And now they were coming for the Devourers. Commander Zethka felt a chill run through her body. The galaxy had spent centuries hiding from the Devourers, building defenses, creating early warning systems, running when they appeared. The best military minds in the galaxy had concluded that the Devourers were too strong to fight directly, but the humans did not seem to care about any of that. "Commander," said Science Officer Keltvin, "I am detecting massive energy signatures from the Sol system. It appears they are building something big." The scanner data showed unusual activity throughout the human star system. Ships moving in formation, industrial complexes working at full capacity, resource extraction on a scale that defied belief. The humans were preparing for war. "Send a priority message to the Galactic Council," Commander Zethka ordered. "Classification, Omega-level threat assessment required." "What should the message say?" asked Vrintal. Commander Zethka looked at the star charts again, at the precise locations of Devourer fleets, at the cold, calculating intelligence behind the human message. She thought about the crashed ship and its desperate crew, about 3 centuries of isolation and preparation. "Tell them we have a problem. The distress signal from Harmony's light has been answered, but not by us." The message went out across the galaxy at faster than light speed. In the council chambers on the central world of Nexus Prime, emergency sessions would soon begin. Military advisors would analyze the data. Diplomats would debate response options. But deep in her bones, Commander Zethka knew it was already too late for debate. The humans were coming, and they were not coming to talk. She looked at the transmission one more time. 9 simple words that would change the galaxy forever. Message received. Survivors located. Retaliation inbound. The Devourers had made a mistake 347 years ago. They had let the Harmony's light escape to a primitive world. They had assumed that primitive meant harmless. Now they were about to learn why the galaxy called Earth a death world, and why death worlds bred the most dangerous warriors in the universe. At the edge of the Sol system, Ambassador Thielk had expected to find a small, newly spacefaring civilization. Perhaps a few primitive ships, maybe some basic orbital platforms around their homeworld. Instead, she found a wall of metal and death. Hundreds of human ships hung in perfect formation. They were not elegant like council vessels. They were not smooth or beautiful. They looked like weapons. Thick armor, plates covered every surface. Gunports lined their hulls like angry eyes. These ships were built for one purpose: war. "By the void," whispered her pilot, Jackson. "How many are there?" The sensor officer, Melta, checked her readings twice before answering. At least 300 visible ships, but I am detecting more behind them. Many more. Ambassador Thielk felt her confidence drain away. The Council had sent her to establish first contact with a primitive species, to guide them gently into galactic civilization, to explain proper protocols and procedures. Looking at the human fleet, she realized how foolish those plans had been. "Incoming transmission," reported Communications Officer Zenal. "Put it through." The main screen flickered to life. A human face appeared. Female, with short gray hair and sharp green eyes. She wore a military uniform covered in colorful ribbons and metal symbols. Her expression was polite but cold. "This is Admiral Sarah Chen of the Terran Defense Force. You are entering human-controlled space. State your purpose." Ambassador Thielk tried to recover her diplomatic composure. "Greetings. I am Ambassador Thielk of the Galactic Council. We come in peace to welcome your species into the galactic community." Admiral Chen smiled, but it did not reach her eyes. "We know who you are, Ambassador. We have been expecting you." "Expecting us?" "The survivors of the Harmony's light told us everything about the Council, about galactic politics, about how you abandoned them to die on our world." The accusation hit like a physical blow. Ambassador Thielk felt her purple skin flush darker. "Ambassador, I assure you that the Council deeply regrets the loss of the Harmony's light, but rescue missions to such distant systems are extremely difficult to mount." "Difficult," Admiral Chen repeated slowly. "Interesting word choice." The human admiral touched something off-screen. The main display changed to show detailed star charts. The same charts that had terrified the monitoring station, precise locations of devourer fleets across 3 sectors. "We have spent 47 years preparing for this conversation, Ambassador. 47 years studying your enemies, learning their patterns, mapping their movements, planning their destruction." Ambassador Thielk stared at the charts. The level of detail was impossible. No Council intelligence service had ever gathered such complete information. "How did you obtain this data?" "We asked nicely," Admiral Chen said with that cold smile. "Turns out the devourers are not very good at keeping secrets when properly motivated." The implications made Ambassador Thielk's head spin. The humans had been actively engaging devourer forces for decades, capturing ships, interrogating crews, building intelligence networks, all while the Council believed them to be primitive. "Admiral, I must stress that the devourers are incredibly dangerous. They have destroyed entire civilizations. Their technology is far advanced beyond anything in Council space." "Yes, we know. Captain Melsar briefed us thoroughly before she died." Another shock. "Captain Melsar survived the crash?" "For 12 years, long enough to teach us about galactic technology, about the threat we would face, about the galaxy that had abandoned her and her crew to die alone on a hostile world." The accusation hung in the space between them. Ambassador Thielk tried to find words of explanation, of justification, but how could she explain 3 centuries of Council policy? "To these humans, Admiral, the Council operates under strict resource allocation protocols. We cannot save everyone." "No," Admiral Chen agreed. "But you can save someone. You chose not to." Captain Melsar understood that choice. She also understood what it meant. What did it mean? It meant we were on our own, so we prepared accordingly. "Admiral," Chen gestured off-screen again, The display changed to show ship construction facilities, massive orbital platforms around Earth and its moon, asteroid mining operations, industrial complexes that dwarfed anything in Council space. We have been building for 47 years, Ambassador. Not just ships, an entire war economy. We have transformed our civilization into a machine with one purpose: destroying the Devourers. Ambassador Thylock felt sick. The humans had militarized their entire species based on a single distress signal. They had spent half a century preparing for a war the Council had spent centuries avoiding. Admiral, surely we can find a peaceful solution? The Council has extensive experience in negotiation and diplomacy. With the Devourers. Admiral Chen's eyebrows rose. How many successful negotiations has the Council conducted with them? The question hung in silence. Both women knew the answer. 0. The Devourers did not negotiate. They consumed. Admiral, even if military action were advisable, the technological gap is too great. Devourer weapons are far beyond human capabilities. Are they? Admiral Chen touched her controls again. The display showed a Devourer battleship. Ambassador Thylock recognized the class. A heavy cruiser with enough firepower to sterilize a planet. But this ship was not attacking anything. It was drifting, dead. Massive holes had been torn through its armor. Whatever had destroyed it had been thorough and efficient. We encountered this ship 6 months ago, Admiral Chen explained. It was investigating reports of unusual activity in our outer systems. We convinced its crew to share everything they knew about Devourer fleet deployments. You captured a Devourer ship? Captured, studied, reverse-engineered. We learn from our enemies, Ambassador. It is what we do. Ambassador Thylock looked at the destroyed ship with new understanding. The humans had not just defended themselves. They had won. Against a Devourer heavy cruiser. The implications were staggering. Admiral, I believe there has been a misunderstanding. The Council never intended to abandon the Harmony's light. Perhaps we could discuss terms for a formal alliance. An alliance. Admiral Chen seemed to consider this. What exactly would the Council contribute to such an alliance? The question caught Ambassador Thylock off guard. The Council always led alliances. Member species contributed resources and followed Council guidance. But the humans seem to have their own plans. Well, the Council possesses vast experience in galactic affairs. Our diplomatic networks, our technological databases, our military expertise. Your military expertise? Admiral Chen's smile returned. The same expertise that has been hiding from the Devourers for centuries? Admiral, I assure you that Council forces are quite capable. I am sure they are, Ambassador. But capable of what? Running, hiding, building bigger walls. The insults. Stung because they contain truth. The Council's military strategy had always been defensive. Build better shields. Create early warning systems. Evacuate threatened worlds. Never directly confront the Devourers. Admiral, direct confrontation with the Devourers is suicide. They are too powerful, too numerous, too advanced. Perhaps for you, Admiral Chen said quietly. But you see, Ambassador, you made a critical error in your calculations. What error? You assumed that power and advancement matter more than motivation. You forgot about what happens when you threaten something that cannot afford to lose. Admiral, Chen leaned forward. Her green eyes burned with cold fire. The Devourers made a mistake 47 years ago. They let one of their ships crash on our world. They let survivors tell us about the galactic threat. They gave us time to prepare. She paused, letting the words sink in. But most importantly, they threatened our home, and we do not forgive threats to our home. Ambassador Thielk finally understood. The humans were not interested in joining galactic civilization. They were not looking for guidance or protection. They had a single goal: complete destruction of the Devourer threat. Admiral, what are your intentions? Simple, Ambassador. We are going to end this. One way or another, the Devourers will cease to exist as a galactic threat. And if the Council opposes this action, Admiral Chen's smile disappeared entirely. Then I suggest you stay out of our way. The Keth Mori homeworld, once home to 6 billion souls, now served as a processing center. The Devourers stripped resources from the planet while the surviving population worked as slaves in massive mining operations. When the human fleet arrived, Devourer Commander Vashatar was not worried. His forces controlled the system absolutely. 3 heavy battleships, 12 escort cruisers, orbital defense platforms around every major planet. Nothing could threaten such overwhelming firepower. He was about to learn how wrong he could be. The humans did not announce themselves. They did not demand surrender. They simply appeared at the edge of the system and began their attack. But their tactics made no sense to Vashatar. Instead of charging his battleships, they scattered into small groups. Instead of using heavy weapons, they launched clouds of tiny objects. "What are they doing?" demanded Sub-Commander Kelth. Vashatar studied the tactical display. Human ships were moving in seemingly random patterns. They avoided direct confrontation with his major vessels. Instead, they focused on support ships, supply convoys, communication relays. They are being cowards, Vashatar decided. They fear our power. But as hours passed, the true nature of the human strategy became clear. Every supply line was cut. Every communication link was severed. The Devourer fleet found itself isolated and blind. The small objects the humans had launched turned out to be sensor mines. Thousands of them, creating a web of information across the entire system. The humans knew exactly where every Devourer ship was at all times. But the Devourers knew nothing about human positions. When the real attack began, it came from nowhere and everywhere at once. Captain Marcus Rodriguez commanded the assault ship Righteous Fury. His target was the Devourer command vessel Death's Herald. According to standard galactic warfare, his ship stood no chance. The Death's Herald was 10 times larger and 100 times more heavily armed, but Rodriguez was not following standard galactic warfare. "Deploy the boarding pods," he ordered. The Righteous Fury's hull split open like a flower. Dozens of small pods shot out, each one carrying a squad of human marines. The pods used no engines, no shields. They looked like space debris to Devourer sensors. By the time Vashatar realized what was happening, it was too late. The first pod punched through the Death's Herald's armor like a bullet through paper. The second pod followed, then the third. Within minutes, human marines were fighting inside his ship. But this was not the kind of fighting the Devourers understood. Humans did not form neat battle lines. They did not follow predictable tactics. They moved like ghosts through the ship's corridors. They used the vessel's own structure against its crew. Sergeant Lisa Wong led Alpha Squad through the ship's ventilation system. Her team moved in complete silence. They had studied Devourer ship designs for 40 years. They knew every weakness, every vulnerability. "Engineering section, 30 meters ahead," she whispered into her comm. Her team emerged from air. vents simultaneously. The Devourer engineers never saw them coming. Within seconds, the ship's power systems were under human control. But the Marines did not simply destroy the ship. They captured it, intact, with its crew alive for questioning. Vashatar found himself face to face with Captain Rodriguez in his own command center. The human was smaller than him, weaker. By all rights, Vashatar should have been able to tear him apart with his bare hands, but Rodriguez's eyes stopped him cold. The human stared at him with an expression Vashatar had never seen before. Not anger. Not hatred. Something worse. Complete professional indifference. Rodriguez looked at him the way a farmer might look at livestock marked for slaughter. "You are Vashatar," Rodriguez said. It was not a question. "I am. And you will die screaming." "For this insult, human," Rodriguez smiled. But like Admiral Chen's smile, it contained no warmth. "Actually, no. You are going to tell me everything you know about Devourer fleet deployments. Then you are going to send messages to your superiors. Messages designed to draw them into carefully prepared traps. I will tell you nothing." "Yes, you will." Rodriguez gestured to one of his Marines. The soldier stepped forward carrying a small device. Vashatar recognized it immediately. A neural interface probe. Highly illegal under galactic law. "Where did you get that?" Vashatar demanded. "We built it," Rodriguez said simply. "Based on technology recovered from Devourer ships. We improved the design significantly." The device was attached to Vashatar's skull before he could resist. Pain shot through his mind as the probe activated. But it was not just pain. It was memory extraction. Forced and complete. Rodriguez watched the data stream across his display. Fleet positions, supply schedules, command protocols. Everything Vashatar knew about Devourer operations flowed into human databases. "Interesting," Rodriguez muttered. "You have been planning an assault on the Centauri colonies." Vashatar tried to resist, tried to block the probe's access to his memories, but human technology was relentless. It carved through his mental defenses like acid through flesh. "Stop!" he gasped. "This is against all galactic conventions." "What conventions?" Rodriguez asked. "The ones that say we should let you consume entire worlds? The ones that let you enslave billions of innocent people?" He leaned closer to Vashatar's face. "We do not follow your conventions. We follow our own. And our conventions say that threats to humanity must be eliminated completely." The probe finished its work. Rodriguez had everything he needed. Fleet positions, command codes, operational plans. The humans now knew more about Devourer activities in this sector than the Devourers themselves. But Rodriguez was not finished. "Now you are going to send a message to your fleet commanders," he told Vashatar. "You are going to tell them that human forces are weak and scattered, that they should concentrate their fleets for a final assault on our outer colonies." "I will not," Rodriguez nodded to his Marine. The probe activated again. This time it did not extract memories. It implanted them. False recollections of human weakness flooded Vashatar's mind. Fake tactical assessments. Incorrect intelligence reports. When the process was complete, Vashatar believed completely in the false information. He would report to his superiors exactly what the humans wanted him to report. "Send the message!" Rodriguez ordered. Vashatar complied eagerly. In his altered mind, he was helping his people win a great victory. In reality, he was leading them into the largest trap in galactic history. While Rodriguez handled the command ship, similar operations played out across the system. Human Marines captured Devourer vessels with disturbing efficiency. Their tactics defied every principle of civilized warfare. They used Devourer weapons against Devourer forces. They turned, captured ships into guided missiles. They released the planet's enslaved population and armed them with Devourer equipment. But most disturbing of all was their attitude toward casualties. When Devourer forces finally rallied and counterattacked, they expected the humans to retreat, to minimize their losses, to follow the careful, measured approach of galactic warfare. Instead, the humans fought with suicidal determination. Colonel James Patterson led the assault on the orbital mining platform. His ship took devastating damage from Devourer defenses. Any sane commander would have withdrawn. Patterson rammed his crippled vessel directly into the platform's main reactor. The explosion vaporized both ship and platform, but it also freed 12,000 Kethmori slaves and eliminated a major Devourer stronghold. As news of Patterson's sacrifice spread through the human fleet, something strange happened. Instead of demoralizing the humans, it made them fight harder. They stopped taking prisoners. They stopped accepting surrender. They fought like beings with nothing left to lose, because in a very real sense, they did have nothing left to lose. Admiral Chen watched the battle reports from her flagship. The humans were winning, but at a terrible cost. She had known this would happen, had planned for it. "Signal all fleet commanders," she ordered. "Phase 2 is authorized." Phase 2 was the part of the plan the humans had not shared with the Galactic Council, the part that would change the galaxy forever. Human ships across the system began broadcasting a simple message, not to the Devourers, to the universe itself. "This is the Terran Defense Force. We are humanity. We have found you, and we are coming. Run!" The message went out on every frequency, in every language, with mathematical precision designed to ensure it reached every corner of the galaxy. By the time the first Devourer reinforcements arrived, the entire galaxy knew that Earth's children had joined the war, and they were not playing by anyone else's rules. Representatives from 400 species argued, debated, and demanded answers. But the questions kept coming back to the same impossible facts. The humans were winning, not just surviving, not just holding their ground. They were systematically dismantling the Devourer Empire with a precision that terrified the galaxy's greatest military minds. Council military advisor Zelnara presented the latest intelligence reports. Her voice shook as she read the numbers. In the past 6 months, human forces have liberated 47 star systems. They have destroyed or captured over 200 Devourer vessels. They have freed an estimated 12 billion enslaved beings from 36 different species. The chamber erupted in shocked murmurs. Such military success was impossible. The Devourers had been the galaxy's nightmare for over 1,000 years. "But surely," interjected Representative Kavesh of the hegemony, "these victories have come at enormous cost to the humans?" Zelnara checked her reports again. What she found there made no sense. Actually, no. Human casualties remain remarkably low. They appear to have developed tactics that minimize their own losses while maximizing damage to Devourer forces. How is that possible? We do not know. Human military doctrine appears to be based on principles unknown to galactic warfare. What the Council did not understand was that humans had spent 47 years studying their enemy, not just their technology or tactics, but their psychology, their fears, their weaknesses. Dr. Sarah Kim had been part of the original team that studied the Harmony's light survivors. She had interviewed Captain Melzar extensively, before the alien officer's death. Now, decades later, her research formed the foundation of human military strategy. The Devourers are apex predators, she had written in her final report. They have evolved to dominate through overwhelming force and fear. But predators have weaknesses. They depend on intimidation. They expect their prey to run or hide. They have never faced prey that hunts back. General Lisa Wong understood this better than anyone. She stood in the command center of the liberated world Keftar, watching her staff coordinate with newly freed alien populations. The scene would have seemed impossible to outside observers. Human soldiers were teaching former slaves how to operate captured Devourer weapons. Engineers were converting Devourer ships into hospital vessels. Scientists were analyzing Devourer biological weapons to develop countermeasures, but most importantly, humans were teaching aliens how to fight back. "General," said Commander Veltar, a Kefetarian who had spent 15 years as a slave. "My people are afraid the Devourers will return with reinforcements." General Wong nodded. "Yes, they will. That is what we are counting on." She activated the holographic display showing the sector map. Red markers indicated confirmed Devourer positions. Blue markers showed human forces. But now there were new markers, green ones, liberated worlds that had chosen to join the human war effort. "The Devourers rule through fear," Wong explained. "They keep their slaves terrified and hopeless. But fear works both ways. Every world we liberate proves that the Devourers can be defeated. Every victory spreads doubt through their empire." What the general did not say was that humans had weaponized more than just alien technology. They had weaponized their own darkest impulses. The Vengeance Brigade was humanity's most controversial military unit. It consisted entirely of volunteers who had lost family members to the Devourers. Not directly, since the Devourers had never attacked Earth, but psychologically, Dr. Martinez had developed the program based on simple human psychology. Humans form emotional bonds with abstract concepts, his report stated. They can feel genuine grief for people they have never met. We can harness that grief. The volunteers underwent intensive psychological conditioning. They were shown recordings of Devourer atrocities, images of destroyed worlds, testimonies from survivors. By the time the process was complete, they genuinely believed that the Devourers had murdered their own families. They fought with the desperate fury of the bereaved. Captain Sarah Torres led a Vengeance Brigade assault on the Devourer Fortress, world of Makthar. Her team consisted of 50 humans who had volunteered to die for people they had never met. They called themselves the Orphan Squad. The fortress was supposed to be impregnable, massive energy shields, orbital defense platforms, a garrison of 10,000 Devourer warriors. Torres and her team infiltrated the facility through the waste disposal system. They spent 3 days crawling through sewage and toxic chemicals. By the time they reached the main reactor, half of them were dying from exposure. They did not care. Torres activated the suicide charges with tears streaming down her face. As the facility exploded around her, she whispered the names of aliens she had never met, children who had died on worlds she would never visit. The destruction of Makthar sent shockwaves through the Devourer command structure. The fortress had been their main logistics hub for 3 sectors. Its loss crippled their ability to resupply their fleets, but the real damage was psychological. For the first time in their history, the Devourers began to feel fear. Admiral Thekvar commanded the largest Devourer fleet in the galaxy. 300 ships, enough firepower to crack a planet. He had never experienced defeat. The concept was alien to him. That changed when he encountered the human task force at the Rigel system. The B. Humans had only 60 ships. By every military calculation, Thekvar should have destroyed them easily. Instead, he found himself fighting the most terrifying battle of his life. The humans did not fight like any enemy he had faced. They used tactics that seemed designed to maximize psychological impact rather than military efficiency. Human ships would ram his vessels at full speed, sacrificing themselves to cause minimal damage. But the sight of humans willingly dying in suicide attacks shattered the morale of his crews. Other human vessels would broadcast recordings of Devourer war crimes at maximum volume. The sounds of dying children and screaming civilians echoed across space. Thekvar's warriors began to question what they were fighting for. But the worst tactic was the simplest. Human boarding parties did not just capture Devourer ships. They converted the crews. Sergeant Michael Chen led one such operation. His team used advanced psychological warfare techniques developed specifically for Devourer physiology: sleep deprivation, sensory overload, constant exposure to images of human military success. Within days, captured Devourer warriors were volunteering to fight against their own kind. "It is not possible," Thekvar raged at his intelligence officer. "Devourers do not surrender. We do not turn traitor." Humans appear to understand our psychology better than we do. They did. Dr. Kim's research had identified a critical weakness in Devourer social structure. They were pack hunters, supremely confident in their dominance. But that confidence was fragile. Once it cracked, it collapsed completely. The humans had designed their entire war strategy around breaking that confidence. Every battle was recorded. Every victory was broadcast across the galaxy. Every Devourer defeat was analyzed and publicized. The humans were not just winning militarily. They were winning the propaganda war. Back on Earth, civilian populations worked around the clock to support the war effort. Factories that had once produced consumer goods now manufactured weapons. Schools taught military engineering alongside mathematics. Children learned to identify Devourer ship classes before they learned to read. The entire human species had become a war machine. President Elena Rodriguez addressed the United Earth Assembly from the Capitol. Her words were broadcast to every human settlement in the galaxy. "We did not choose this war," she said, "but we will finish it. Not just for ourselves, but for every species that has suffered under Devourer tyranny. We will be the shield that protects the innocent. We will be the sword that strikes down evil." The speech was translated into 400 languages and broadcast across the galaxy. Alien species that had spent centuries hiding from the Devourers began to hope. But hope came with a price. The humans were not gentle liberators. Their methods were brutal, efficient, terrifying. They showed no mercy to their enemies and little patience for bureaucratic delays. When the Council tried to establish refugee camps for liberated slaves, the humans bypassed them entirely. They armed the refugees and sent them back to fight. When Council diplomats attempted to negotiate ceasefires, the humans ignored them. There would be no negotiation, no compromise, no peace until every Devourer was dead or converted. Representative War. Thylok tried one last time to reason with Admiral Chen. "Admiral, surely there must be some way to end this conflict without total genocide." Chen looked at her with those cold green eyes. "Tell me, Ambassador, how many children did the Devourers eat on Keftar last week?" I do not have exact, numbers. 43,000. We know because we found the remains. Tell me about the breeding camps on Vexnor, about the torture laboratories on Keltash, about the 1,000 other atrocities your council has spent centuries ignoring. The Admiral leaned forward. You call it genocide. We call it pest control. The galaxy has a devourer problem. We are the solution. As Thielk left the meeting, she finally understood the terrible truth. The humans were not interested in joining galactic civilization. They were interested in reshaping it according to their own moral code, and that code was absolute, uncompromising, terrifying in its certainty. The galaxy was about to learn what happened when humanity decided something needed to change. Supreme Devourer Commander Jektal, last leader of a dying empire, sent an unconditional surrender to Admiral Chen. His message was brief and desperate. We yield. Please, stop. The humans did not respond immediately. For 3 days, Jektal waited in his command bunker on the Devourer homeworld. Around him, his empire crumbled. Fleets surrendered without firing a shot. Worlds that had been Devourer strongholds for centuries opened their gates to human forces. When Admiral Chen finally answered, her response was even briefer than his surrender. No, the humans had not come to accept surrender. They had come to ensure that the Devourer threat could never rise again. The final assault on the Devourer homeworld lasted 6 hours, not because the defenders fought hard, but because the humans were methodical. They cataloged every weapon, every piece of technology, every cultural artifact that might pose a future threat. General Wong led the ground forces personally. She walked through the capital city as Devourer civilians cowered in buildings around her. But she was not there to harm them. She was there to offer them a choice. You can continue being Devourers, she announced through loudspeakers that echoed across the city. You can cling to your old ways, your old beliefs, your old hungers, and we will treat you as the threat you choose to be. She paused, letting the words sink in. Or you can become something new. Something better. We will teach you. We will help. You. But you must choose to change. The Devourer re-education program was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Humans did not simply punish their former enemies. They rebuilt them from the ground up. Dr. Kim, now elderly but still brilliant, designed the psychological rehabilitation process. It was based on simple human understanding of behavior modification. Reward positive actions. Punish negative ones. Provide clear goals and achievable progress markers. Within 5 years, former Devourer worlds were producing art instead of weapons, growing food instead of breeding slaves. Their children learned mathematics and poetry instead of torture techniques. The transformation shocked the Galactic Council more than the war itself. It is impossible, declared xenopsychologist Beltar. Species do not change their fundamental nature, especially not predatory species like the Devourers. Ambassador Jennifer Walsh, humanity's new representative to the Council, smiled politely. With respect, Doctor, you have been studying alien psychology for 3 centuries. We have been changing human psychology for millennia. Every human civilization has had to learn to control its violent impulses, to channel aggression into productive activities, to choose cooperation over conquest. But humans are different. You evolved on a death world. You had to adapt or die. Exactly, Walsh agreed. And now we are teaching that same adaptation to former devourers. They can evolve or become extinct. Most are choosing evolution. The Council struggled to understand this new reality. For 1,000 years, they had lived in fear of the devourers. Now those same beings were becoming productive galactic citizens under human guidance. But the humans were not finished reshaping the galaxy. The Never Again Doctrine was announced without Council input or approval. Admiral Chen, now promoted to Supreme Commander of Human Forces, delivered the message personally to the Council Assembly. Effective immediately, humanity claims responsibility for galactic security against existential threats. We will maintain early warning systems in every sector. We will station response fleets at strategic locations. We will intervene in any situation that threatens innocent life on a massive scale. Representative Kavesh stood to object. Supreme Commander, such a unilateral action violates every principle of galactic sovereignty. Does it? Chen asked mildly. Which principle specifically? The one that allowed the Devourers to consume worlds for 1,000 years while you debated responses? The one that let billions die while you formed committees? She activated a holographic display showing the galaxy before and after human intervention. The difference was stark. Sectors that had been dead zones now teemed with life. Trade routes that had been blocked for centuries were open again. Former slave worlds were rebuilding their civilizations. We are not asking for permission, Chen continued. We are informing you of our decision. Humanity has accepted the burden of protecting those who cannot protect themselves. The Council erupted in protests, threats of economic sanctions, demands for immediate withdrawal. But the humans ignored them all, because the Council had no power to enforce their will. The human fleet was now the largest military force in galactic history. More importantly, it was the most effective. No species could match their strategic thinking, their technological innovation, their willingness to sacrifice for their principles, and they were not alone. Over 60 species had formally allied with humanity during the war. Worlds that had been liberated from devourer rule, civilizations that had been saved from extinction. They formed the backbone of what humans called the Free Galaxy Alliance. These allies did not serve humanity. They partnered with them. Humans provided military protection and strategic planning. Allied species contributed resources, technology, and personnel. Together, they were unstoppable. The transformation of galactic civilization took decades. But it was thorough, complete, irreversible. Trade networks that had operated on exploitation and fear became cooperative enterprises. Piracy and slavery disappeared from space lanes protected by human patrols. Scientific advancement accelerated, as former enemies shared knowledge freely. Most importantly, the galaxy's children grew up without fear. Captain David Chen, grandson of Admiral Sarah Chen, commanded a patrol fleet on the galactic rim. His mission was simple: watch for threats. His crew was drawn from dozen different species, former enemies working together toward common goals. On this particular day, they received a distress signal from an unknown system. A primitive species had achieved spaceflight and encountered something beyond their understanding. They were calling for help. Set course for the signal, Captain Chen ordered. Maximum speed. His communications officer, a former devourer named Kelneth, looked concerned. Captain, we have no authority in that system. First contact protocols require Council approval. Chen smiled. It was the same cold smile his grandmother had been famous for. Officer Kelneth, what did you do before you joined my crew? I consumed worlds for the glory of the Empire. And what do you do now? We do not ask permission to do what is right. We simply do it. The patrol fleet jumped to faster-than-light speed. Behind them, automated monitoring stations continued their endless watch. Human technology, scanning every corner of space for signs of new threats, because the humans had learned something the galaxy had forgotten. Evil was not inevitable. It was not unstoppable. It was simply a problem that required the right solution, and humanity had become very good at solving problems. On Earth, now the unofficial capital of galactic civilization, children learned about the old days in history classes, about the time when the galaxy lived in fear, when entire species hid from monsters in the dark. Their teachers explained how that era ended, not through politics or diplomacy, but through simple human determination, through the willingness to sacrifice everything to protect others. The Memorial. To the Harmony's light stood in Geneva, where the United Earth government had first received the alien distress signal. The inscription was simple. They asked for help. We answered. Below that, in smaller text, was the promise that had guided humanity for generations. Never again will evil go unopposed. Never again will the innocent cry for aid in vain. Never again will fear rule the galaxy. And in the deepest space where new threats might one day emerge, human patrol ships maintained their vigil, watching, waiting, ready. Because peace was not the absence of war. Peace was the presence of those willing to fight for it. The galaxy had learned this lesson from Earth's children, from the Deathworlders who had answered an ancient distress call with missiles and determination and an absolute refusal to let evil win. The message had been received. The survivors had been located, and retaliation had been delivered. But more than that, a promise had been kept. The promise that Captain Melsar had made to her crew as they died on a distant world. That their sacrifice would not be forgotten. That someone, somewhere, would carry on their mission. Humanity had carried that mission forward, and they would continue carrying it until the heat death of the universe itself. Because that was what humans did. They protected those who could not protect themselves. They answered distress calls from strangers. They refused to let good people die alone in the dark. The galaxy was safer now, not because the threats were gone, but because Earth's children stood guard against them, and they would never stop watching.